Welcome back to the Don Lemon Show, everyone. This episode is going to be a little different. It's going to be, I think, more serious than things that we usually talk about, but it's definitely worth your while to pay close attention. It may even be a little bit somber, but I'm hoping hopefully that's not so, okay? I'm hoping you're going to learn something about my next guest, and that is Sofia Nelson. Sofia is a Detroit-based public defender who used to be close friends and is a law school classmate of JD Vance. Now, last month, Sofia made public scores of emails and text messages, as a matter of fact, that she shared with Vance, or Vance shared with her, illustrating just how much the man has changed over the last few years. Sofia, thank you for joining me. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, Don. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I can't imagine for you that the last few weeks have been easy.
It's been a surreal, strange experience for sure. I'm a relatively private person living my normal life here in Detroit, but I think truth is important, so I'm happy to tell the truth.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for joining us. So let's go back and then we'll get into what's happening now. Um, how did you first get to know JD Vance? Do you remember the first time that you two ever met?
Yeah, we would have met during our first year orientation at Yale Law School. We were assigned to the same small group, which means we took all of our first year courses together. And so I would have met him in the fall of 2010. I don't have a distinct memory of our first encounter or anything. I know that's disappointing for the media. But I remember, genuinely really being drawn to him, liking him. We both come from the industrial Midwest. We both, grew up in working class communities, and that put us apart from the average Yale law student, and we bonded over kind of our shared backgrounds.
Yeah. So you were classmates first and foremost. Did you ever enjoy each other's company outside of study sessions?
Of course, yeah. No, we socialized together, and then after law school, we visited each other. He's come here to Detroit to visit me, and I've gone to Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Um, so it's got to be a little bit weird for you that considering that you were friends, and I'm going to share some other stuff that he said to you, a personal note that he wrote to you. But it has to be odd, like hearing him say what he says and his particular stance now on the LGBTQ plus community and in particular trans people.
It's hurtful. It's disappointing, and what I've seen is a chameleon, someone who is willing to turn their back on their core values and in order to amass money and power. And someone who I think since he decided to reconstitute himself as part of the new right has surrounded himself in an echo chamber of people, mostly almost exclusively men, almost exclusively white. And he's getting most of his information and ideas from the likes of Curtis Yarvin and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. And I think eventually, if you live in an echo chamber like that, you're going to start adopting some really extreme ideas.
Hmm. What happened, do you think?
I mean, I don't live inside JD's head. I can't definitively say what happened. But what I saw is someone who was always conservative, but thought the culture wars were a waste of time, certainly had a lot of queer friends, had a pretty diverse friend group actually in law school. And I think similarly had a diverse friend group in undergrad. And when he was in the military, we all know how diverse the military is. But in 2018, he considered prior to 2018, I suppose around 2017, was considering a run for the U.S. Senate in Ohio against Sherrod Brown. And information quickly came forward through consultants and polling that he simply had no path forward in the Republican Party with his current stances on issues and his opposition to Donald Trump. And so he went back to the drawing board and reemerged as who he is today. And so to me, it's a story of someone who's willing to turn their back on their community, their friends, their core convictions in order to amass money and power. But I don't think it's simply that he doesn't believe anything that he's saying, right? I think he has come to believe what he's saying because the cognitive dissonance of advancing something you don't believe in is too much for most people to handle. And he's lived in this neo or new conservative or new right, they call it. I don't know all the language of it, but I've read a number of the thinkers in that movement, and he surrounded himself with those people. From the Heritage Foundation, I mean, he was integral in Project 2025, the Claremont Institute, and these techno-authoritarian billionaires. I mean, Peter Thiel launched his political career with $15 million when he ran for Senate in 2022. And Peter Thiel doesn't think women should have a right to vote. So these are some really fringe ideas, and you, on some level, are the company that you keep.
Are you, when you're saying you don't know what happened, let's take people back, because you're saying he was a never Trumper. And I
Yes.
interviewed him a lot on CNN when he was a never Trumper. Okay.
Yes.
I shouldn't say a lot, but a number of times. And he had
Mm-hmm.
this book out called Hillbilly Elegy,
Yes.
right? Where he talked about his experiences growing up, in the heartland. I don't know, was he necessarily a hillbilly? It was a very catchy title, but
I don't know
neither
that
here
he
nor
came up with the title, but
yeah,
uh,
neither here nor there. So, but you said that he realized that he didn't have a path in the Republican Party, so he reinvented himself, right? Is that what you said?
that's my perception. Yes.
You don't believe this is real? You think it's fake?
Well, I
You think it's
think
inauthentic?
well, I think he's lost touch with his authenticity, right? I don't know that he can tap into that anymore because ambition has been the overriding principle. Um, it's hard for me to imagine, right? We all evolve, we all change. And I certainly have evolved on issues. I think changing your mind with new information is a good thing.
Mhm.
But changing your mind on so many different important issues that you've given a lot of thought to, while also changing the way you speak and your personality, is not so much an evolution as a complete transformation. And so I think when you hear that he lacks authenticity, he's a fraud, he's a chameleon, that all rings true to me. Again, I don't live in JD Vance's head. I can't definitively say what's happening here. But I also think the story is slightly more complicated than that because so he makes this decision and he starts making those connections that he would need to rise in the MAGA movement. And he surrounds himself with those people. And he's talking with people from the Heritage Foundation, the Claremont Institute, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Curtis Yarvin on a regular basis. And I think eventually he starts believing what he's saying.
Mhm. So I ask you that because I have, you know, not, obviously not as close as you. I sort of witnessed that with JD Vance. I was shocked when I started hearing the rhetoric coming up. It's like coming out of his mouth. I'm like, that is not the guy that used to sit on the anchor desk with me or via satellite, and I would interview him. That's not the guy's book I read,
No.
back in, what was it, like around 16 or 2016, who actually likened Trump to Hitler, right? Which was
Mhm.
extreme. But I've witnessed what you have said in a similar way, in that people who um, started out as never Trumpers in media, right? One of them was the former White House communications or the press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, came on CNN as a never Trumper and then ended up becoming a Trumper. And I feel because she realized that it was the shortest line to the front, that social media or whatever it is showed that she actually got more popular. There was more popularity and more clicks whenever she agreed with something for Trump. Very similar thing that happened with Kellyanne Conway. She was the holder of the Ted PAC Super PAC, Ted Cruz Super PAC. And then just within one day, all of a sudden she became a Trump advisor and then joined his team and his campaign director. And I saw that happen to a number of people, or people who would say one thing about Donald Trump in the green room or before the cameras would roll. And then we come out of a commercial break and they would say something completely different.
Mhm.
But I think it's the shortest line to the front, which I think is, for me, much worse than if you actually believe it. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and I on some level I agree with you. It shows that power and wealth are more important to you than core values, integrity, truth, um, the dignity of your neighbors. But there also becomes a situation where if you are only listening to people on the extreme fringe and those are who you're talking to every day, I think it's really hard to be in touch with your actual convictions, right? This is
Mm,
somebody, he's speaking for quote unquote the heartland. Well, I actually live in the heartland. I've never lived in San Francisco, and I don't have any billionaire friends. And I don't consider myself a quote, monarchist like Curtis Yarvin. I thought we fought an entire revolution so we would never have a king. And that is the people who have been influencing JD since he decided he needed to have that short path to power, right? He the front get to the front of the line, as you say. But I think it's even scarier than a Kellyanne Conway, right? Because Kellyanne Conway is trying to keep a job, right? JD Vance is trying to become the new leader of the Republican Party. He knows that Trump won't be around forever, the man of a certain age. And MAGA is a cult of personality. And say what you want about Donald Trump, but the man is authentic.
mhm.
He was a racist in the 70s, he was a racist in the 80s, he was a racist in the 90s. He's a racist today. This is somebody who used his own personal money to take out a full page ad in the New York Times asking for the execution of 5 innocent black men, and he still hasn't apologized for that today. So I think this man is consistent. Um, JD sees that MAGA controls the Republican Party, and he's using MAGA to advance an even more extreme agenda. Him and the likes of Peter Thiel and other techno authoritarian billionaires are trying to take over the Republican Party. And they're trying to take it over for this incredibly fringe agenda around increasing birth rates, using the government to incentivize and almost coerce heterosexual marriage and reproduction, and becoming a Christian nationalist state. And these are not things that, certainly there are members of the Trump base who support these things, but this is not like the Trump agenda. This
Mhm.
is something very organized, very calculated, and very extreme, and frankly, very weird.
Mhm. Why are you doing this?
Well, one, I think the American people are entitled to know where their leaders stand on things. And if you think that JD Vance is someone with integrity and that someone you can trust when um, during the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, he emailed me very thoughtfully about how police are focused on coercion and control and have lost their community caretaking concerns, and that they don't treat black people fairly in this country. And now he's saying back the blue no matter what and standing up for Kyle Rittenhouse. If you think someone who thought that reparations on the level of, at least when it comes to redlining and disenfranchisement of Black veterans, was something that the government needed to financially compensate victims of. If you think he could transform on all those issues and go from, I think you know this because you interviewed him, right? A very thoughtful, careful, measured person who was kind. Right? He
Mhm.
didn't call people names. He didn't mimic the way Donald Trump talked about people. And now he's out here name calling, using dehumanizing language, being cruel. If you think that kind of transformation is something that reflects integrity and core values that you share, then for all go for it. Vote for JD Vance. It's up to you to make that decision. But I think the American people need that information in order to be able to make that decision.
So, listen, I am speaking for people who are watching. Well, they're going to say she, and look, and I asked Sophia which pronoun. She said I can use she or he, right? And you're fine with both of
Or
those.
they, yeah, all are good.
Are they? Are they? So I asked Sofia, and Sofia said, um, you know, people will say, I should say, Sofia, well, she's weird, or she has an agenda. She has it out.
Mhm.
She's a lib, and she just wants to get JD Vance because she doesn't want him to be in office. She wants Kamala Harris. She wants Tim Walz. She wants the liberal lefties to run this country.
Mhm.
That's what folks are going to say.
Of course, and that they're entitled to that. I'm asking people. I'm not telling people who to vote for. I'm asking people to look at the record, look at the things he said, look at how he's flip flopped on almost every imaginable issue that affects everyday Americans, and look at the way he's talking about people, and decide for yourself, does that reflect someone with integrity? And does that reflect someone with my same core values? And at least here where I was raised in the Midwest, we treat everyone with kindness, even when we don't understand or agree with them, because
Did,
you should treat others how you want to be treated. And calling people sociopaths because they don't have children, that just doesn't reflect the values that I was raised with.
did you personally struggle with coming forward and
Oh,
doing this?
hugely. I mean, first of all, I'm a private person. I'm not a political operative, right? I don't never run for office. I've never. I don't work for a politician. I've been a long time, public servant. I lead a private life, and so opening myself up to extreme anti-trans vitriol as a going public was not at the top of my list of things to do.
So it
Um,
must be personally hurtful to you.
I was hurt for sure, but that's not why I'm coming forward. If this isn't a vendetta against JD Vance, I wish him the best. This
Mhm.
is a commitment to the idea that voters deserve all the information when making their decision. And it's a
Mhm.
commitment to trans people, especially trans kids who are a flashpoint in this election, that at least the JD Vance that I knew doesn't hate you and he's not scared of you. He's using you as a political ploy. And I'm hoping on some level that's comforting because I was a trans kid once who thought there was something deeply wrong with me. And it's scary. And it's not okay to be used as a political ploy. It's not okay to be exploited in that way. But hopefully, knowing that he has been loving and caring to a trans person can help you understand that this is a moral panic. This is fear mongering. This isn't actually anyone thinking there's something wrong with you.
A couple of things, because I'm going to read what he wrote to you, but I'm wondering, why do you think that they? Let me ask you that question second. I'm going to get to this, and then I'll ask you that
Mhm.
question. As I mentioned, just earlier, how just a few weeks ago you released a host of communications between you and JD Vance. So if you don't mind, I just want to hone in on one of them. This is from 2016, and then Vance apologizes for misidentifying you in his memoir, right?
Mhm.
Hillbilly Elegy, and then he wrote this. He says, "Hey, Sos. Here's an excerpt from my book. I send this to you not just to brag, but because I'm sure if you read it, you'll notice a reference to an extremely progressive lesbian. I recognize now that this may not accurately reflect how you think of yourself. And for that, I am truly sorry. I am really sorry. I hope you are not offended, but if you are, I'm sorry. Love you, JD."
Mhm.
So I'm just curious about your reflections on that note, because generally, you said that you said he had a diverse group of friends,
Mhm.
members of the LGBTQ community, right, at Yale. Folks joke that they call Yale the gay Ivy. He had many queer friends, and he was comfortable, right, with gay and lesbian people?
Yeah, and he supported gay marriage at that time, marriage equality.
Yeah. So then my question is the
Like he
second question.
publicly he was that's not an assumption. He said he supported marriage equality out loud.
Yeah. So then why do you think he and the right now, MAGA and the right, why are they so focused on and obsessed with trans issues? Because trans people are such a small percentage of the population. And my question always is why do you care so much?
Mind your own business, right? That's what Tim
Yeah.
Walz keeps saying on the campaign trail, and I think that I grew up in a town smaller than the town JD grew up in, and I was taught to mind my own business and treat everyone with respect and kindness. Treat
Mhm.
others how you want to be treated. So I don't understand it, but I do understand that fear is a motivating factor for folks, and if you can whip up a moral panic and scare people, you can get them to the polls. And so I think this is opportunist.
Have you spoken to him recently?
I have
Communicated at all?
no.
No. Last time I think it was it one of the last times, 2012, after you had gender affirming surgery, he brought, baked goods. He brought you baked goods, right? Am I correct
Yes.
with that? What
Hmm.
was that interaction like?
It was kind. It was generous. He was a good friend. He was a supportive friend. I mean, I supported him. That's the thing about being a decent person, right? I did not agree with JD's politics. There were lots of parts of hillbilly elegy that I took issue with. I don't think that poor people are trapped in cycles of poverty because they're lazy. The people I grew up with, the working class people that I went to high school with, they were struggling not because of a lack of work ethic, but because of deindustrialization and uh, the rising wealth gap and greedy billionaires taking too much of their profits and not sharing with workers. Um, but that didn't mean that I wasn't rooting for JD. That didn't mean I didn't treat JD with kindness. I mean, the email that you read where he's talking about the book and apologizing for misgendering me, I replied that I was so proud of him, that I was really happy for him, and that I was glad that he was having this success because I don't have to agree with your politics to support you and want good things for you because I'm that's just not.
We say people don't understand that. They think just because you I love that you said that. I love that you said that. Thank you for saying that. Go on.
I
I feel
just
the
think.
same way about myself and my friends who are maybe a bit more conservative or even sometimes a bit more liberal than I am, or just we don't see eye to eye on everything. I still love you, but as long as you're not out there harming people or, attacking people, then okay.
I mean, that's how I was raised, and I grew up in an overwhelmingly conservative community that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And the people that I'm still friends with from grade school and high school, they would never use the kind of language that JD Vance uses to talk about people, right?
Mhm.
JD Vance wrote a foreword for a book that calls progressives unhuman. This is not only fringe and strange, it's dangerous. And it's dangerous because when you start dehumanizing people, which is what the Republican, not the Republican Party, but the MAGA movement is doing around trans people, we know where that leads to. It leads to greater violence. And
Mhm.
there is nothing about the fact that I got gender affirming surgery or that I, present the way that I present every day at my job that makes it hard for anyone else to live their life, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to police anyone else's sex life. I don't want to police anyone else's gender. And I don't want to police anyone else's ability to have the number of children or no children, whatever it is that they want, right? That's not my job and it's not the government's job. And that's what JD Vance is trying to do. And I
Mhm.
mean, these are my personal political opinions. I released the emails because, again, I think he's trying to pull a fast one on everyone. And people deserve to know that he has changed his position on so many issues. And he's gone from being a generous and kind person who was able to have respectful dialogue across political differences to writing the forward for a book that says that, anyone on the left is subhuman.
Mhm. Do you how do you think he's doing? The polls show he's like the least popular presidential candidate, I mean, maybe vice presidential candidate maybe ever.
I mean, I think that's because the American people, right? The circles that
The
he's
American people recognize someone who's
not authentic,
they like
right?
it, they like
Authenticity is so
authenticity.
important in politics. And I'm not a politician, but I was in this world of elite, wealthy people, right, from Yale Law School. I didn't like it, and I went immediately back to the Midwest and live my very middle class life here in Detroit since 2013. JD chose to stay in that world, and that world
Mhm.
is transactional. That world does not value authenticity. You rise in the ranks of that world by loyalty, by doing favors, by exchange, and JD Vance was bought by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel gave JD Vance $15 million to run for the Senate in 2022. Do we think that Peter Thiel, a billionaire, cares about the working class people of Ohio?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't.
Um, what do you think of a couple things that's happening now? One, before I get to the, cat people or cat lady,
Mhm.
um, what do you think of this whole idea of Tim Waltz and Stolen Valor and criticizing him wrongly? As a matter of fact, I feel like they're targeting him, and it's unfair about retiring from the military and that he abandoned his whatever. And the person who is leading the charge is JD Vance.
I mean, I think it's unfortunate. I think it's sad. I don't know Tim Waltz, and I don't claim to be an expert on the military. I think criticisms of JD Vance's military record are also out of bounds. These are both men who serve their country and serve their country honorably, and that's where it should be left, right? So I don't. I've heard retorts on the left that are calling into question JD Vance's service, and I think that's similarly inappropriate.
What about the cat ladies?
That I watched when it happened. I mean, I wasn't watching Tucker Carlson, but a friend sent it to me after the fact, and I was hurt and disappointed at that time. And I also dug in. It got me to dig into this whole um, natalism movement that JD traffics in. And it's a very disturbing world because, and Tucker Carlson has talked a lot about the great replacement theory. And I think that undergirds a lot of this concern, right? If you're concerned about a declining population, you would be for things that allow people to support their families, right? Paid parental leave, paid sick leave, increasing the minimum wage.
IVF or
Yeah,
women's reproductive, all kinds of
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
All of the things that support working class families. And you would be pro letting young people from countries that are ravaged by violence come to the United States and build a better life. But
Mhm.
instead, all JD Vance wants to see is only certain kinds of people reproducing and punishing other people. And I think using government power in that way is un-American, and it seeks to attack me and my neighbors. And so I'm disturbed.
Yeah. His wife has been in the spotlight since the convention. She's gotten some attacks, a lot of attacks from racists in JD Vance's own party. Did you knew her at Yale, right?
I did.
Yeah. Is it Usha? Usha.
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 Hmm.
Um,
And
so what
to be
was that
clear,
like?
they got racist attacks as soon as he became a public figure. So dating back to 2016, they shared that with me when we were still close friends. So this isn't new. He obviously they were prepared for it. He was well aware, and he emailed me one of the emails that I released to the New York Times. He said that the Trump base is disproportionately racist, and so he's well aware of who he's getting in bed with, if you will. I think it's sad. I mean, no one should be judged on those
And no one
grounds.
should be subjected to that. But I'm wondering, what was she like? Were they similar in their ideology? She seems to be a
No.
bit more liberal, at least from the research than he was, or he
Yes.
is.
I mean, I'm fairly certain she voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I would
Mhm.
describe her as a center left in her politics, very
Mhm.
evidence based, techno, like a technocrat.
Yeah. So listen, I want to
And I don't
fast
know
forward
where she
because
stands now, right? Obviously, she has tied herself to his evolution as well. They both value power over all else.
yeah. So fast forward, you graduate from Yale Law
Mhm.
School. You never say goodbye to him, right?
No.
Because you strike up effectively what's sort of a pen pal, right? You guys were texting or emailing or whatever, or writing.
We texted and
Um,
emailed, but we also visited each other. I mean, we were friends. I
oh, you
attended his
did,
wedding.
yeah. Oh, you did.
Hmm.
Go on. And
It was a lovely, beautiful ceremony. I mean, I was very happy for them. I saw their relationship begin while we were in law school together, and I was excited when Ewan was born, their first child. Our relationship didn't really fall apart until 2020, 2021.
yeah, I have some college friends that are like that, who became like crazy MAGA people and did not believe in facts and I was like, wait a minute. All this time I went to college with you and we were good friends. I never knew that were racist. And they would say racist things. And it just kind of shocked me. I don't know how that happened. But so you guys were, and same thing, I would attend their weddings. I was very
Mhm.
close to their families. It is very hurtful. And I mourn the loss of the that friendship and the people they were. Certainly not the people that they have become. You know
And
what
I
I
want to
mean?
be clear, it's not, I have friends who, or there are people that I love that voted for Donald Trump both times. But how you treat people and talk about people matters.
Mhm.
And when you
Notice I did say I said they became MAGA, not necessarily voted for Donald Trump. There's
Yes,
a
and
difference.
yeah, I
Go
think
on.
there
Yeah,
is. I
go ahead.
think that's an important distinction. And I grew up in a conservative community. I live in a swing state. I have a lot of relationships across religious difference, racial difference, sexual orientation difference, and class difference, political difference. Right? That's We all live in community, and we know how to treat everyone with kindness. JD is out here denigrating trans people, uh, denigrating anyone who doesn't agree with him, and denigrating women and denigrating people without children. And he's doing it in these incredibly callous terms. He's mimicking Donald Trump's divisive cruelty. That is not okay, for starters. It's dangerous for our country. People are sick of it. They want to get back to like Thanksgivings being pleasant. And it's not the person that I knew, and I don't think it's the person that you knew. And so
Yeah.
I think it also reflects a willingness to turn your back on your values in order to amass money and power.
Yeah, listen, I don't to me, I'm not even sure I would call him an acquaintance. It was just someone who would
Hmm.
come on and I would speak to. And quite frankly, we probably could have been friends. I would go to have a beer with the guy. I
Yeah.
mean, now, not so much. It's interesting that you said what you said, because what I have found, and look, I go with my gut, and my gut
Hmm.
is usually right. I was right about Trump in 2016. He
Hmm.
ended up winning. I said he was going to win. A lot of my Democratic and progressive friends, they were so mad at me, but I
Oh,
was
I
right.
knew he was going to win because I was door knocking for Hillary Clinton in Michigan, and I was door knocking on union doors, and
Yeah.
over and over and over again, people told me they were voting for Donald Trump. So I knew it was
Yeah.
happening too because I was hearing it from the
Yeah.
voters.
Yeah. And so now I feel, Sophia, you can tell me if I'm wrong. When you said people don't, they want to laugh and, have dinner and whatever, go to Thanksgiving. I feel the same way about the strategy and the tactics now of Donald Trump and MAGA. I feel
Mhm.
like they're running a campaign from maybe the 90s or even 80s, with this sort of Willie Horton style racism that they're
Mhm.
displaying on that side. And I
Yes.
don't think it's penetrating. I don't think people are interested in it. I think the extreme right wing, they are interested in this, but I don't think overall anymore people are interested in anger and bigotry and racism and homophobia as a whole. I don't. I mean, there's certainly factions in the Republican Party now, which has for the most part become MAGA. And so I think that they are off in their strategy, and they are just as ignorant as to what's going on as to Democrats in 2016 with Donald Trump. I think that they don't understand just how poorly what they're doing is resonating with the American people.
I agree. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from my community. We all know queer people. We all know people of different races, and we go to work with them. We worship with them. You know, they're our neighbors, and we don't want to fight about those things, right? We want to be able to pay our bills. We want uh, people to have freedom and dignity in their personal lives, and we want our kids to have opportunity. And that has nothing to do with these culture war issues and this meanness, this cruelty. It's gotten real old, right? Trump is an
Mhm.
entertainer. I think the whole "you're fired," all of that stuff, it was like novel and interesting, but we've heard it, right?
The novelty's run off. The thrill's gone. The
It's
thrill is
gone.
gone.
And
Yeah.
I think that the way Tim Waltz talks about America, it's very familiar to me. Obviously, Minnesota, Michigan, very similar states. I had teachers like him growing up that helped me realize my potential. And that's the kind of solving problems, right? Throwing your moral outrage at solving problems instead of creating them.
Mhm. Um, I'd mentioned just how poorly he is polling among vice presidential candidates, but if Trump and Vance ultimately lose the election, do you think that he's going to feel that it was all worth it, that he alienated so many people?
And that's a question for JD Vance. I'm very open to him transforming back. And
Him transitioning?
yeah, uh, I think I would welcome him with open arms. And the man that I knew, I loved and cared about, and I still care about him, and I wish him no harm. Um, and I hope that he can realize that treating everyone with respect and kindness is never a wrong move. And if he can return to that, then more welcome back to the decency table.
Are you a Christian or believer or religious? You're not.
No, no,
But you're
my
saying
yeah.
something you said you're not, but you're saying something that, that Christians usually espouse, like, they say that, "I welcome someone with open arms. I love them. I love the sin and love
Mhm,
the sinner and not the sin," and whatever. I
mhm,
don't really that's a longer story,
mhm.
because I don't necessarily agree with that whole love the sinner and not the sin thing. But, I you're saying something that most Christians should be doing, but yet they don't. They don't accept you.
Sure, but I don't know.
I shouldn't say most Christians. I should say, evangelicals or, Christian nationalists. I should make a distinction.
So my partner's deeply religious. She's Muslim, and my mom is deeply religious. She's Episcopalian. So I think I'm rooted in some of my deepest influences are religious people, and in the line of work that I do, right? I've been a public defender for 9 years. I don't believe in good and bad people. I believe
Mhm,
that good people are capable of doing bad things,
mhm.
and I believe people are capable of change. And I believe in loving and respecting everyone. And so that might sound religious to some people. For me, it comes from a different place, but I definitely have a lot of religious influences.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, it's what Christ preached. It's what Muhammad preached. It's what, it's the root of a lot of faiths. And it's also just the root of core Midwestern values, which is you don't have to agree with someone or understand them to treat them with respect and kindness.
You said that you would welcome him with open arms. Do you think you'll ever speak to him again?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm not going to attach myself or try to play nice just to maintain access to power. If you're not going to respect my inherent right to exist with dignity and my right to have freedom over my own body, um, then that's where I draw the line as far as
Mhm.
friendly communication. But anything can happen. I mean, I never would have predicted in 2018 that he would be espousing the stuff he's espousing today. So if he can change, more power to him.
I should ask you, would you reach out? Are you ever tempted to reach out and say, "Man, what are you doing?"
Oh yeah, I mean that was the fight that kind of unraveled the friendship was when he started becoming
I
saying
mean,
really
even now,
about trans
like,
people in 2021. I reached out and said, "What are you doing? Why is it like what's happening here?" And he told me I was had been brainwashed by Jeff Bezos, which is like a really funny thing to say because I haven't bought anything on Amazon in a long time, and I'm a union member of UAW, very proud, and not a big fan of billionaires who exploit workers. So. Uh,
yeah. Wow. But now that was enough for you. You would not reach out to him at this point.
I wouldn't, but I would receive a reach out. I mean, like, I'm not going to affirmatively reach out. No.
What would you say to him?
I would say, what am I doing? What are queer people doing that makes it hard for you to live your life? I don't I don't think there's anything wrong with being deeply religious with wanting to have a big family, with going to church every Sunday and raising your kids to believe that's great. I want you to have the freedom and respect and dignity that you deserve, and I don't understand why you're trying to control how I live my life. And I want to know, what is it that trans and queer people are doing to make it hard for, quote, normal Americans, which is something he keeps saying on the campaign trail and something that he said to me in 2021. I want it articulated. I want it answered. How does my existence make it hard for you to live your life?
Very good question. Hopefully he can answer that. If you are listening, JD Vance, can you answer that question, please, for your friend Sofia? Because clearly you are still his friend, the way you're speaking about him and as kind as you're being. And I don't think he is returning that. Thank you, Sofia. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, Don, and I appreciate you shining a light on this issue.
Thank you. Thanks for watching The Don Lemon Show. Make sure you click on the image in the top right to subscribe to my channel and the thumbnail in the bottom right to watch more content from my show. And I'll see you next time.